This morning, the Arkansas Supreme Court held a hearing in the Mauricio Torres case.
Now, the Bella Vista man previously convicted for the rape and murder of his son twice. Both times, new trial's been ordered.
Investigators say Torres sexually assaulted the 6-year-old while the family was camping in Missouri. A day after that assault, Isaiah died at an Arkansas hospital.
Now, here's a breakdown of the convictions. In 2016, Torres was convicted and sentenced to death, but the state Supreme Court overturned that conviction, stating the prosecution did not demonstrate its case for the death penalty. In March of 2020, Torres faced a new jury. They convicted him again, but just before he was sentenced, a courtroom scuffle broke out that led to a mistrial.
5 News reporter Juliana Clipson breaks down how this case got to the point of going before a judge over and over again.
In 2015, the death of 6-year-old Isaiah not only hit the hearts of those in Bella Vista, but his story of abuse and sexual assault touched the hearts of those across the world.
I think about Isaiah Torres, it really breaks my heart. I think it breaks everyone's heart because he's an example of what children do go through here right in our own community in Northwest Arkansas.
Child advocates watched as his father, Mauricio Torres, stood in trial. Horrific details emerged about the day investigators say Isaiah was sexually assaulted while the family was camping in Missouri. A day after the assault, he died at an Arkansas hospital.
With Northwest Arkansas being more a wealthy part of the state, we tend to think it doesn't happen here, but unfortunately it does. And Northwest Arkansas leads the state with the number of reported cases of child abuse.
Mauricio was convicted in his son's death in 2016 and sentenced to death, but the state Supreme Court overturned the conviction because they say the crime happened in Missouri, not Arkansas. 4 years later, Torres faced a new jury and they convicted him again. Now, during that last trial in March of 2020 here at the Benton County Courthouse, Torres' stepson was on the stand. He lunged towards him, and then that sent the trial into a mistrial, bringing the prosecution and the defense back to the Arkansas Supreme Court. Now, the Arkansas Supreme Court is trying to decide what will happen next. The defense is asking for a new third trial, the prosecution pushing to move forward with the sentencing.
By definition, this is an extraordinary at this point, one-off type circumstance.
To be clear, the plain language of Section 602(3) does not require a jury that determines punishment to have determined guilt.
The Arkansas Supreme Court will make a decision on the fate of the trial by as early as next week. In Bentonville, covering news where you live, Juliana Clipson, 5 News.
All right, Juliana, thanks. Torres scheduled to appear again in the Benton County Circuit Court on March 12th to review the Arkansas Supreme Court's decision.